He gave us more bottom dollar.
All right, 5:05. Let's bring the joint budget meeting together with selectmen and the budget committee. We'll start with the pledge of allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag,
United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, if anybody's got a conflict, please disclose it. Don't think there's any adjustments. We got one piece of correspondence I see in our packet from Travis at the end.
Mr. Chair, there are two additional pieces of correspondence that have come in. I'd like to pass around. That one.
There you go.
All right, thank you. Committee gets a copy. And there's one more. Chair, one is an email from Brad Stokes and one is a memorandum from town manager to the board, budget committee, Rangeley residents and the press. I'd like to get into that one under number 6 if I could.
Okay, that's fine. I'll push that down there. So I'll hand it over to you to pick up where we left off on page 30, I believe.
Sure, let me get that page out. We'll start off with highway department, as the chair said, it's on page 30. Increase in wages, that is a common theme that you've heard so far in this process. Is there was a collective bargaining agreement that was ratified in June last year, after the vote was set, that increases or increased wages for everybody in the contract. So you'll see the difference between 25 and 26 there is about 42,000. So it's a significant increase in 0102. And then you'll see the bottom, the overall compensation reflects that also. And then fringe benefits are affected by that in every budget. FICA, health insurance, et cetera. Not necessarily health insurance, but FICA, reimbursed, those things are affected by the wages that have gone up. So those are increased by factors. Actually, in this department, they've gone down some, and I was thinking that the explanation for that is that there's employees that have come on that don't take the same coverage level previous year. We have single employee there, a person that doesn't take family health insurance. So that explains why that's down some there. Travel training has come down. As you can see, we weren't using much of that over the last couple of years, 23, 24. A lot of it's online. A lot of the folks have trained up on courses that they need to take, but there's still some in there for folks to get their local roads training. They do get some incentives to do that for certain courses that are contract. Using subscriptions is the same. We've got to sign up this year for that APWA. Just haven't done that yet. Meals and lodging is the same. This is the line where folks, if they work over 12 hours in a shift, they're entitled to meal allowance per contract. So that would come out of here when that happens. Office supplies, computer supplies are the same. We're on page 31 now. Postage, cleaning supplies are the same. So operating supplies is remaining 40,000. Diesel has come down, and that's based on what we're using for the approximate average price per gallon, which is 407. Marty's done all those calculations for us to get a projection. That's going to come down some over what we budgeted this year.
Shelley?
So for the line for the uniforms, 1510, is there a particular reason why that was increased and you're only at 2,600 for year to date for 2025?
Yes, Mr. Chair, there's a new agreement that we have with Cintas. It's gone up, I don't know if it's 3 or 5%, but it's gone up a percentage this year and the next couple of years. It's a 3-year agreement, as I recall. And you'll see that reflected in other departments that have uniforms in their contract. Minor equipment has come up. That's for increase of, for upgrading his air tools and the supply, the air supply equipment for that. They use a lot of that when they're working on the trucks. Stockpile has come up. This is the aggregate that is typically kept on site. They'll bring it in or have somebody haul it in. It's gravel, rocks, riprap rocks that they keep on hand in case they need it. When they can't get into a pit or something like that, it's easier to take a load from there than bring it on site where they're working. That's increased. The year to date, that is an error in the accounting that should be coded to sand and salt, which is the line above it. You see year to date 42,830. That should be moved up. We'll take care of that.
So you mean 15, 13 material stockpile should be higher? Is that what you're saying?
15, 13
Like
year to
13,
date.
right?
Year to date, Mr. Chair, is if you're looking at the year to date 2025, 15, 13 is incredibly high. And that's because items were coded from that account that should have come from the one above it, 15 to 12. I just want to point that out to folks. We haven't spent, in reality, we haven't spent 42,000.
So is 8,000 enough?
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
okay, these two combined, okay, thank you.
Patch is the same. We usually do that in the spring. Rangeley's lucky. My experience with other towns, typically you do a lot of pothole patching, but we don't compared to other towns. So 2,000 is good, but we only have to spend that in a year. Some years we haven't, so.
Shell?
So if that's the case where it was actual in 2023, 2024, and year-to-date for 2025, do you need to have that 2,000 for this year? Could you do, if you're doing it in the spring, then it would be part of 2025 budget? Or is that misrepresentation?
Well, again, they typically happen in the spring. I don't know what the spring's gonna bring. It's good to have that placeholder in there so you can buy patch if you need it. So what's in the budget now would be spent 2 months from now. It wouldn't be, the material may not be available a year from now. Which is why I left it in there.
They haven't, sorry,
Oh, go ahead.
and they haven't done anything in the past 2-3 years.
Yeah, that's kind of the point. With Rangeley's pretty lucky, but if you need it, you need a
Right.
line to take it, right? To patch potholes. You don't want to just leave those. Like there's one that's starting to pop up in the park that we have to patch. It's not very big, but you know, they are starting to come up here or there.
Yeah, you jinxed us.
Shelley?
So I'm just like, a lot of the stuff that we keep raising money for and stuff, some of them may be small, for amounts and stuff like that, when what the averages are and stuff. And I know you're trying to, if something happens, if something goes up or something, but it's just a matter of, we have to raise it each year, and if we're not spending it, that's what? 3, 5, 6, 7,000 that we've raised within the past 3 years. I mean, is it really necessary to have that dollar amount? I'm just throwing that out there.
Right, Mr. Chair, I think those are the discussions that would lead the budget committee to make recommendations to the board there before you prepare the warrant. I think those are great questions. I think, you know, the purpose in the code is for the manager to present a budget, the budget committee to hear the budget.
Yeah.
Make comments on that to the board prior to them, you know, finalizing their budget. So I think that's perfect conversation piece.
And if anything can be used in 2025, that isn't like part of the average cost for 2025, you could spend it in 2025 and lower 2026.
Then you don't have to raise as much.
Right.
1515 is culverts. It's the same amount as last year. This is a similar situation as the stockpile. We buy enough, we buy it in bulk, keep it on hand. You have projects where you know you're gonna use it, and then you have projects that come up where you need one in the middle of the night, middle of the morning on a Saturday or something because it washed out. So we keep those things on hand. They've gotten quite a bit more expensive than previous years.
So what's the supply look like? For 18,000, you're at 9,300 for year to date. and then we're raising another 18,000. So do you stockpile them every year, or do you go like every other year, or?
So we stockpile them for every year, and then they're used for projects, and then if there are some left for emergency repairs, and then they're used for that. In the previous couple of years, we've spent, one year exactly what we budgeted, and the next year a little more than that, and that was just enough to get by. That's why we bumped it up in the year we're in and for the year coming. And in those two previous years, 23 and 24, we used up a lot of stuff that was on hand. So we kind of need to replenish that stockpile. No change in 1519, 1520. 1524 is the hearing test line that you've heard me talk about. Up there for everybody. If every seat was full or every chair was full down there, then that would cover the 500. Gas is the same. They're using one gasoline pickup truck now, but that covers small equipment and fleet vehicles. So that appears to be pretty much on track there. Telephone's the same. Electricity's gone up. The rationale for this, as you can see, it's climbing in the year to date. The rationale there is we've got the heat pumps, so the heat pumps are costing more than electricity used to cost. And now you'll see when we get down to heating fuel, and that's costing less. So there's kind of the scales are kind of tipping. That's why we've raised up electricity. Street lights we brought down based on actuals. We're halfway through the year and we've spent about 5,600. So we brought that down from 16 to 1,200. A lot of this is due to the fact what LEDs put in, but also we have a power purchase agreement where we purchase solar credits. Heating fuel, again, here's what I mentioned a moment ago, 2005. We budgeted 8,000 for this year. We've spent 125. Now, we're just now getting into the cold snap. We are using heating fuel. I don't want to give people the impression that we're not, especially when it's below zero and we've got to open the doors and so forth. We're going to use some, but this is kind of the first full year we have with the heat pumps. So we're going to be gathering the data on that, see how close we've come with our projections. I mean, this is pretty good evidence here that we're not probably going to spend $8,000 in heating fuel, but we are going to spend more. If you look back up to 2002, we're clearly going to spend more in electricity. Okay, 2501, we left that the same. That's the facility upkeep. And you know, some of these lines you may not see that's been spent halfway through the year or even a third of the way through the year yet, but sometimes those expenditures come in the spring. Just pointing that out there.
Jill?
Propane, line 20-10. We raised $200 for each one, and it looks like it's been at a zero balance for the actuals for 23, 24, and year to date for 2025. That's propane under 20-10.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, this is an anomaly. It has to do with the generator that's on site. And we discovered this when we were going through the budget. I don't know if that was being billed somewhere else in the previous years and not. They had to have been filling it up because it test runs every week. So the best estimate we have is 200 for that. Unfortunately, we don't have that historical data in it. Something we're looking into. But the propane is for the generator at the highway garage, not the generator at the pump station next to it. Vehicles, we're right on track to 30,000, about halfway through this year. We're pushing 15. We're pushing 13, but we're close to 15. Equipment, we're a little bit over in that one. But we've had some things that we've had to do that I think so we're also pretty comfortable, but 20,000 is good. We'll support that. Radios we brought down. He does have some tune-ups that need to happen this year. In the previous years, you could see some of that wasn't used. But this year, He's got tune-ups that need to happen. And they're working with other departments to try to make sure that they can communicate through a faucet, get faucet information back this way.
Kelly?
So is the radios coming out of a different department? Or underneath a different expense, because year to date is 0 and it's been 0 for the past 2 years.
Right, I don't believe there's been any expenses here, in the last couple of years. This year he has some repairs that need to happen, some tune-ups.
So this year, right, because we raised 3,600 for this year. So would we actually need 2,500 for next year? Because you have 3,600, could we get it fixed within this calendar year? And get all the repairs done rather than wait and then raise and get additional funds for 2026?
That makes sense. This is Kitty.
Hello, Kitty.
Something to
Something to talk
something to
about.
mark to come back to, yeah.
I just don't know if there's any particular reason why you had forecasted those expenses to be at 2,500. I just, that's all.
Good.
Sometimes there are items that are earmarked for certain stuff, so if we don't know that, I don't wanna cut something that's not.
It's general radio maintenance. No change in 25-17, 25-23. So if you look at the overall year to year, what I'm requesting this year is a little bit less than what the budget year we're in currently, in repair and maintenance. Testing and monitoring, there's an increase there. That has to do with the video system at the highway garage.
Kelly?
So on line number 25-23, the crack sealant, where, we're proposing to raise $20,000. Year to date is at 0. And then we budgeted 20,000. And then in 2023, it was almost 22,000. So we went over by 2,000. And then last year, in 2024, we didn't spend any funds. So does the crack sealant, does it happen every year or does it, is there like a reputation,
Typically, it does happen every year. It's set aside to take care of the newer, typically you want to do the newest roads first, ones that have been recently paved and cover those cracks up. There is a carry forward, I believe. That's why you don't see the actual spent in 24.
that was a carryover in 2024?
I believe so, yeah.
And I see that in revenue.
Well, that would confirm.
Okay.
If you, did you say you saw it in revenue?
We would see that in the revenue part. It says, there's a revenue part that says carry forward. And then it had a couple of things that were listed in there. I just have to look.
How's that? Good question. Again, the 75 increase, you can see a 24 actual, we spent that, that's for the video monitoring system at the highway garage. So that contract services up 75, advertising we leave just in case we need it. You can see sometimes we use it, 23 we used it, we didn't end up using it last year, so we dropped it down. That's where we might advertise for a position or do some type of public notice related to it. And then the debt principals moved to the debt service account, which we'll talk about at the next meeting. And then I think we're at the end of it. So all in all, it's up from 836 up to 862. As we talked about early on, most of that, or at least half of that, is compensation related from the CBA. Next item is sewer department, starts on page 34. Common theme here with wages. It's up about 27,000 or so. And benefits will reflect an increase. Training costs are up. This is the year where folks are going to have to do a lot of their training. So we've got 3,000 that we're in, and then extra training will happen next year. That's why there's 3,500 in there.
Joey?
So did that mean the extra training is gonna be budgeted for this year, for 2025, in addition to next year for 2026?
So there'll be some courses that happen this spring. Money that's in the 25 budget, and remainder of it in 26.
So then the 3,500 is over next.
Those are lodging, folks would like to go to the Maine Rural Water Association conference this year, which I support, so they bumped up the as a lodging item. So all in all, that's up $800 or so travel training.
Sorry.
Joe?
When is that event? Like, would it be within this fiscal year or next fiscal,
It would be next year.
next year?
Your supplies is up. Cost of ink and so forth. No change until you get to diesel. Again, this is another area that's gone down because we're ready for average per gallon price. No change in safety. Slight change in lab supplies based on year to date. Here, that's there. Some locations it wasn't budgeted for, but I talked about that in the previous meeting. Make sure it's in there everywhere this time. Starlink is there. Electricity is still at 32,000. This is one of those areas where, as I mentioned a little while ago, sometimes you don't see. You might naturally expect to see things, get paid 10% each month as the year goes on, but with spraying. I expect this to go up, with the snow, winter spray. That's all, those pumps are all driven by electricity. That should be climbing this time of year, and then when they get going in the spring, you'll also see that go up. But this is one we'll be keeping an eye on, the electricity. Again, we get the solar power purchase credits that we kind of distribute across different departments. The same, kind of the same thought here, especially in the spring with pump stations. Unfortunately, sometimes we get water into the system, shouldn't be, but we still have to end up pumping it, so you'll see some uptick in electricity. As far as that goes. Let's see, I don't see any other changes until you get to spray fields. That's for the consumable parts that they use. They get out in the sun and they get weak, where break down or break. So based on year to date, bump that up. Sewage treatment plant 2519. This is one we didn't spend for the last couple of years, but last year, the year that we're in, we took it out of the budget, and we're talking with the crew. I understand why it should be in there. I put it back in. This is where they cover parts of the field that need to be covered with a certain type of gravel, certain gradation, and they've used up whatever they had up there, so they need to buy some more of it. So that's why that's back in there this year. Testing service costs are up by 3,000. Just a quick note in 3519 about the note there. I don't expect there will be relicensing of septic sludge, but this note would be for the annual license. Or this line would be for that. We just need to update the note on our end. No change until you get to. I guess there's no other changes in the budget that I see. The debt service, all zero. You would see that. The debts are in the debt service account that weren't zeros. This one is up about 40,000.
Yes, Cindy.
Joe, I missed your comment on, line 3518, the testing and monitoring. Why was that increased again?
Because of the cost of testing, the price of it. If you look at the actuals to 23, was up, down in 24, it's back up. That's what they're projecting, actual testing.
Mark?
So this, meter reading line 3521, do we pay that to the water district? Is that how that works?
Mhm.
Okay, thank you.
Nellie?
And, in regards to this department, do we know what the usage is and stuff to see if there is going to be eventually another lagoon that needs to be created? Is there any forecast for that?
I'm not sure that's in our capital plan. I'd have to refer to that. I think, from what I understand, we're okay with the one that's there for the current capacity, and it's in good shape. There's not a lot of sludge in the bottom of it. The liner seems to be okay. There are maintenance things you can do to that. It probably would be in the CIP, but as far as building another one, I don't think we're at that point.
Okay, good. Just checking all the new houses.
Right, next is solid waste on page 39. I want to thank Rich Brown for being here tonight. Thanks for coming, Rich.
Thank you, Rich.
Wages, yeah, increased because of the effects of the collective bargaining agreement. Which is a good collective bargaining agreement, by the way, in my opinion. But that's good, that they're up. And then it has the same effect on fringe benefits as the other categories. Dues and subscriptions is up slightly, because you can see the year to date is 115. I want to say, training costs have been down considerably. They're recommending against this year because their cyclotron conference has been paused. Travel and training overall is down slightly from last year. Office supplies are down slightly. It's based on what they've been using so far. Computer supplies will be the same. Postage the same. Building supplies, no change. Next change is in operating supplies, which is a decrease based on what the projections are for active use. Diesel's the same. That's for the generator and the backhoe fuel tank. Safety, it's come down some based on what he's projecting to use. Uniforms have gone up, consistent with what I mentioned earlier. We've got an increase in that agreement over the next 2 or 3 years. No other changes on that page. This is the windshield permit year, so you'll see a pretty good jump of 1523. That happens every other year. Gas has come down. One of the things that happens here, just so everybody knows, is when they run the lawnmower, the trimmer or something, the highway guys or the park crew might bring gas with them and just do the chores. So it doesn't necessarily always get spent out of this. But there should be a line item there. That's why it's been zero in the past. So we haven't charged for it, but Rich and I have talked about that. We brought it down. Just based on what we think it's going to take to trim up there. Telephone's about the same. Rich they do have Starlink up there for their internet. I don't believe that Fidium has been past the airport yet, just as a sidebar. My last conversation, just in case anyone. Electricity is down, just based on power purchase agreement and usage. Water's down slightly. Rich has forecasted that out. He's pretty careful about those. Propane is up. Just because of increased fuel costs. Kerosene, we added in there, so we brought that down. There's a kerosene heater in the control room. That's a new one this year. It's just replaced a little while ago. It's super efficient. So the tank should get us quite a while. Buildings is up a little bit in repair and maintenance. This is a line, so in the year to date, this is probably a good point to bring this up. This is where I believe we've charged, I don't have tree in front of me, but I believe this is where we've charged out some of the pest control that's happening so far. That'll be something that you'll see later on as a new line item. No change.
Joe, can I speak up for a second?
Sure.
Just understanding where we are right now with the facility, primarily the control room, and it's obviously its current situation with pest. Do you think, or does Rich think, I guess at this point, understanding historical, the age of that control room and the building and structure, and now obviously with an infestation, do you think it would be wise, as we look at mitigation of that problem, to probably look at inside the compartments of those walls, understanding nesting, understanding droppings and health conditions that may be within that facility itself? So maybe that budget line doesn't represent what may be needed as we look at that mitigation problem?
It's a really good point. I'll talk about that for a minute. My vision for this, is, without getting too graphic, is that we can get things under control in the next few months to a point where it's a good time to bring all those elements in the building out and clean it out. I don't know how expensive it would be to put it back together with the drop ceiling and so forth, or if we even need to do that. I don't know what it would cost without tearing it apart, I guess, which I would expect to do out of this year's budget sooner than later.
Okay. Thank you.
Vehicles is the same equipment. There's a slight increase there. This is another line. I know I mentioned a while back that we had regular maintenance done on the compactors. And then there were some things discovered during that regular visit that warranted a second visit, a return visit to handle some of that stuff. Well, this you'll see in 2025 is spent over a little than we expected. But I don't, in talking with Rich, I don't expect that again next year with regular maintenance. We shouldn't have that. So we have bumped it up a little bit, but not to the 6,000. Just had the tank pumped, so we're not expecting to do that again. So let's drop to 0. Licensing is up slightly over last year. And here at 3536 is the new line item that was recommended by a board member, which is an excellent idea to have a standalone pest control services line. So we have my vision for this is we currently have 2 folks kind of working in tandem there. One is doing one method that's been in place for a while. The other one's going to put in a much more high-tech method at the end of this week, next couple of days. One's a 6-month agreement, one's a 1-year agreement. So I don't expect them to run in tandem beyond the 6-month agreement. So the 3,800 is what it should cost for the whole year. And I envision this being an ongoing line item up there, just for maintenance purposes.
Mark?
Line 2517, routine road maintenance. It's a small amount. This year it was 4 times as much in 24, but I was wondering how that gets done. Does the highway department come in and perform that road maintenance and then invoice the sewer department?
No, it depends on what's happening for activity. Typically, what I see and expect is some material is brought in. Neither Rich and his folks use the tractor to straighten it out, or the highway folks will come in and use equipment to straighten it out, fix up what it is. It is a small amount because it's typically been just for a couple of loads, a load of gravel these days.
Right.
But the town has some of that stuff, like shale and stuff packed away that we already own. Sometimes we'll use that, that's not necessarily reflected in this line. So, to answer the question, Mr. Chair, no, it's not invoiced internally.
Right.
If a group goes.
But
out
if
to
the situation allows, you do the repairs in-house.
Oh, sure.
Have the highway department bring up whatever number of yards of
Yeah.
gravel you need, and then Richard hit, guys use the bucket loader to back drag it out and stuff like that. Is that how that works?
Yeah, it can work that way, or it can be the highway folks that do it. It's typically an internal function. Yeah.
Sorry, Cindy. go ahead.
Jim. Just going back up on 3518, the testing and monitoring, that line's been unspent for 3 years, 3 budget years. Just trying to understand, it says it's DEP required testing, so why are we raising 1,700 again this year?
It's actually a really good question, Mr. Chair, that we are trying to figure out internally. I brought that up. Rich and I were talking about it, and I've been talking about it.
We have a contract that does the treatment plan also. And we suspect that maybe they paid.
Oh.
Yeah.
So it's happened, but you're just, okay, but maybe the invoicing is gone to the Chick Hill facility.
That's what we're wondering, but we don't have a
Okay.
definitive answer on that yet. We haven't.
So if that's the case, is there a chance that this line be struck? We'll come back to it. Just a heads up. Thank you.
No changes. On the rest of that page, when you get to page 43 is when we start to see some increases. There are contractual increases in tipping fees and transportation fees. As you'll see reflected there, those are added up. I think they're 5% in each. It's around there. Our disposal, we've increased that. By a couple of bucks. Recycling has gone down some, based on Rich's projections. Deionizing has gone down, the refrigerators and freezers and so forth, that's gone down a little bit. Hazardous waste has gone up, and that's because AvCog will be at our site this year. They kind of do a circuit now. They have people come to remote sites. So we're hosting this year, right, Rich?
Yes.
Fluorescent tubes is up some, just based on Rich's projections there. So overall, what's it about? We're looking at about 41,000 increase.
Can I speak real quick again?
Sure.
Just a question, understanding as we look at in this case, the 5% increase in our contract through tipping and tonnage when was the last time we reviewed our costing sheet for those fees that would generate revenue to offset those?
I think it was 20, we were just looking at it the other day, it's 2020 or so, I think. It's due to be looked at.
Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you. Cindy?
Just to piggyback on Keith's comment, the customers charged for the tire disposal, the defreonizing, and the fluorescent tubes, is that a wash? Are these budget lines a wash because of the amount that's charged to the consumer, or is that another thing that needs to be revisited?
Well, we're not charging for the fluorescent tubes.
Okay.
But we do the tires and, yeah, the tire price should probably be looked at.
Yeah, and I know that, Mr. Chairman, just a continuation on, I know that we had talked about scales and that a different way of charging customers, because obviously we're charged per ton with our contract. So I just didn't know where that stood. So just putting that out there.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, there is a revenue breakdown. We'll get to that probably in the next meeting. Yeah. I wouldn't, just to answer the question, I don't believe it's a wash, but it's definitely something we should look at. Rich and I will be looking at it, get something to the board.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Eagles.
I think that completes, all the ways. Anything you'd like to add, Rich? Did I miss anything?
Well, talking about the fees, the refrigerators are pretty much a wash.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Rich.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, Rich.
One more comment from me in the peanut gallery. And maybe I'll do some research, but I do believe like fluorescent bulbs. I don't understand why they cost the town money to get rid of. Generally, like TVs and stuff, manufacturers have to pay that fee to dispose of them. So I'm trying to figure out, I know there's a handling cost between our facility and a removal process, but I feel like there's a portion there that we shouldn't be spending. Just my thought.
We can look into that.
Kelly?
So one thing that has always come up, like in the summertime, the transfer station is open 7 days a week. And that's really necessary. And I don't know, I mean, we've already looked at the front stop being closed on Fridays. It's a bit of a sore spot, but maybe something looking at the transfer station as well, and not necessarily having them, and actually accommodating the hours for the taxpayers, since there's more second homeowners. Usually they wanna not leave their trash for an entire week. So I think it's important for the Saturday and Sunday hours to stay open, but that's just my opinion on that.
Thank you.
All right, page 44 is the airport. Rich, you're free to go if you'd like.
You can stay though if you'd like
Rich, you're
to.
free to stay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Rich.
Thanks, Rich.
For the airport right away at 0101, this is an increase with the intent that in talking with the airport commission and my own feeling, it's nice if there were someone who was the airport manager other than the town manager. So that's why there's an increase. The number, I did a little brief survey that didn't do much for me. So the number I picked up was just based on 8 or 10 hours a week, $30 an hour. Doesn't necessarily mean we need to pay that. That's a budget number. And the intent is to maybe attract someone other than the town manager to be the airport manager.
Kelly?
I believe when the town manager was hired, when you were hired, the airport commission was part of, your duties. Is that correct? It's only because you have these big projects that go on up there, like, that you really need someone that's in the town office to manage those. I mean, the airport commission is just like an advisory board, the same way the budget committee. We don't really have any votes. We don't do our own budgets. So I just don't, I mean, I don't understand why that's not still part of the town manager piece with the 4110. So.
Thank you, Joe.
But just, I feel like I need to clarify, it's not in my contract. Just so the public knows, and I don't mind doing it. I'm not saying I don't want to do it. I'm just saying I have other things that demand my attention. And it would be nice to have someone else to take this over. So there's that increase. Any fringe benefit increases related to that. I should back up. This is another area where I don't believe in any case we did any adjustments for stipends for folks who are on boards or committees. I think I tried that a few years ago and it just ended up taking a lot of time. So if the board is interested in that, I won't be offended if you would increase that. In fact, I think you should talk about it. I just wanted you to disclose to you, I didn't do anything with those. And then supplies, we pretty much made very few changes here. I'll point out the places where I did diesel. Again, that's based on the projected average price per gallon. Their equipment's the same. Telephone is up. The big reason here is we're including Starlink for internet. And that will help with the AWAS getting out. And AWAS is the weather system that goes to a third party in Tennessee and then to the FAA. So that depends on internet. It also will help the weather cam and the new security cameras. So now that we've got a lot of this stuff running on that same very weak signal, everything else, everything that needs to go out is going out, but the stuff that you'd like to be able to see remotely, namely the security cameras, is a challenge because of the bandwidth.
Ethan?
I'm just out of curiosity, any reason for Starlink now that fiber encompasses the whole county?
So I don't believe that, well, based on the last conversation I had with Video, they haven't built out past the airport yet. And it would take some construction to build out from Loon Lake to the SRE.
Okay, so
It's not a no.
I'm just curious
And
because we didn't have it up until, recently, and now we have it. So I was just curious.
I've had conversations with them and I've tried my hand at negotiating with them to see if we can get that. I'm working on new phone systems for the office too, because those are due to be replaced. At this point, it was a fairly expensive endeavor and I don't know if I can, convince them to do it, but I'm going to continue to try. But in the meantime, I'd like to have.
The Starlink's great. I just was curious what the Starlink goes up to 300 megs, and that's plenty.
Mark?
With that video, my understanding was that when we got that grant and that project went through, that their commitment was to run that high-speed internet fiber to every residence and business in Rangeley Plantation, Sandy Road Plantation. Did that not end up being in the final language?
Did we have existing telephone service there before?
There is telephone service.
So I would agree with Mark. That's what was said. So I don't know if a timeline ran out, but if you had an existing line, then they were going to run it to your place free of charge. If you didn't have an existing line, then you were going to have to pay for it to get there.
After 500 feet, they paid
Yeah,
the first 500.
Is that what it was? Yeah.
You'd have to take.
Yeah, there were some nuances with conduits too.
It's all on the ground.
What we bumped into.
Yeah, right. So that would change it too. That's why I don't have it at my house, because my conduit's full of dirt.
Good questions. Electricity is down. Heating fuel's down. Again, based on the average gallons. See any other changes? It seems like I had one. I do want to point out 3527 on page 46. There's a 0 on janitorial services. That's not because there won't be any. It's because we received one response to our RFP. In fact, I think we have a meeting scheduled tomorrow to see if we can talk with that person. So until that happens, and until the board approves a proposal, it's leaving it at 0, so I don't forget to put the right number in there. So it won't be 0. So overall, a slight increase. It's
That's mostly the new position.
It is, yeah.
Cynthia?
Just to go back, to line 0101 and the airport manager position, so, is there anything scheduled on the airport master plan that is, in projects, large projects, time consuming, projects that is why it's earmarked for this year, or is it?
So there are two projects in the CIP. One is a pavement preservation, which is a crack seal and striping. And the other one, I believe, is a design function for parts, although I don't know if any of that money, the BIL money will be available to the town, given recent developments, but at the federal level, I mean. But anyway, there were those two projects that are slated. I have a scoping meeting next week. Consultant for that. So there are those, and then there are the ongoing tasks, the requirements that the position entails.
So is the crack seal and striping, is that under capital, or is that, you know, something highway does, or is that included in 2511, the runway?
That's included in the airport capital improvement.
Okay, all right.
And by that, just to clarify, Mr. Chairman, I mean the CIP, the main DOT uses in the airport commission. It may not necessarily be funneled into the capital improvement plan
Okay.
of the town. Okay, I'm on page 47 now, which is Parks and Recreation. Thank you, Patrick, for being here tonight. Appreciate it. First item is salary. This is a similar conversation what we had in the first meeting about how I arrived at these numbers, working with the salary survey, conversations with staff. Wages, that's the 0102 is a collective bargaining position, so that's up, as I noted earlier. Overtime wages hasn't changed, stipends haven't changed. You can see the list of where these stipends are spent typically. And again, this is one of those accounts where sometimes you see things that have a low year to date, but they really ramp up in the spring. Baseball and so forth really kicks off.
Kelly?
Under the wages, who does that include? Is that the lifeguards?
So 0102, Mr. Chair, is the light equipment operator in Parks and Rec. That's a full-time person.
Okay.
0102. 0104 would be overtime for that person. The stipends have stayed the same. Again, those are some of the positions listed there that fall into that category. Part-time wages, these are park attendants, recreation coordinator, recreation assistants, and those folks, those positions have been, in my observation, are very helpful in the initial stages of the rec program. I know Pat has a big vision for it, and he wants to carry it forward. So, you know, I think in the first year did good with that, and we're trying to keep that rolling. So there is an increase there. To make sure that we get 2 park attendants at the park, we only have 1 here. And then 2 recreation assistants to help with programming. So compensation is up, as you can see, I don't know about, what is it, 23,000 as well.
Mark?
I'm just curious about, Rangeley funding, this whole department when, you know, I think maybe 40% is utilized by Rangeley residents. And that's just a guess. I don't have data, but I was talking to some other people that live in different communities, like in Westbrook residents, their kids that participate in these, they pay a small fee, but they're all of those that apply, all restaurant people, Westbrook people that want to participate, they get a spot, you know, on the, and that, and then, but if you live in Gorham, you pay a little more. If you live in Portland, you pay a little more. So they have a different rate for outside things. And, you know, I just wondered, you know, going ahead, if, you know, it's fair that Rangeley residents pick up the whole tab. Just something to think about.
Thanks.
I know you won't wear out your brain.
You never know.
Fringe benefits reflected on the increases in wages. Was changed in operating supplies. A lot of that has to do with the increased need for paper products. I think I talked about that in the last meeting. Our use of those has increased. Diesel, that's coming down. Main reason that's come down is the new PNR truck is gas powered. So the diesel one will be phased out. It's not being used now currently. It'll be phased out for good. Uniforms are up, same explanation here as it was previously. Your equipment's the same, equipment supplies are the same. You can see a list of some of the items that fall under that category. Again, another line item that some money will be spent from it.
Shoot.
I also think there was some.
I just lost.
Hello? Do you have a question or can you hear us?
Is that Kitty?
Yeah, it's Kitty.
Hi, Kitty.
I think she was saying she lost connection or something.
Go ahead, Drew.
So there were some items that were scheduled to occur last year that were rained out, so you know, this balance hasn't been spent as much as it would have been otherwise, but it's one of those that we spent more in the spring. Year to date, talking about 15, 17 currently. 15-20 is up slightly, that's equipment rental. I think what we've done there is put in another portable toilet unit. We've added those into some of our events, the 3rd of July and so forth. It's taken some of the pressure off the permanent restrooms. Then here's the other side of the equation with the fuel for the truck. This is 1528 gasoline. This will be increased. Diesel will be decreased. No change in electricity. Water's the same, sewer's the same.
Sam?
Have you guys thought about with the porta potties or portable units of purchasing them, or is that a thing? I mean, since we use them in multiple events, multiple places, instead of renting them.
I
Is that a
don't,
thing?
I do.
I don't know if you want to, but who wants to?
Mine, that's the easy part, but maintaining them.
Put the sewer department on it.
It's not bad, it's not bad.
I mean, it's a lot of money to rent them, and I can't imagine they cost that much.
They're $650 a piece, $650 to $700 a piece to purchase a brand new one.
I mean, and sorry, I mean, just for long term, and I can't imagine they.
I
maybe
think
they do.
I agree with you. I think the hardest part, in my opinion, would be having internal pumping. Like obviously to go to whatever facility you're at or event you're at and pumping it out. We don't, to my knowledge, we don't have our own apparatus that would allow us to pump it out and then transport it to offsite.
Makes sense.
I think that's the main issues, yeah.
Thanks, guys.
Okay. Buildings are down, speaking of pumping things out, a couple years ago, we budgeted for an increase in pumping the outhouse facilities in Wausau. We were having trouble with the person that normally does it, couldn't get some of the debris that was in the tank up through his hose. So we got an industrial company to come in, and since we got it cleaned out, we can get back to the normal person.
Hey, there you go. Use their services.
Yeah, well, we do. It's the same
We do
company
the
that has
same.
porta potties. Yes.
Well, you know, can't imagine it
That's-
costs much more.
One of the reasons we can bring that down. So that one's down. Is up. We have we do now have 2 vehicles in this department. There's the director's vehicle and then the plow truck that we just picked up. So there's an increase in maintenance there. equipment, you know, we picked that up to 6,000 for added, trash cans, benches, goose fingers, those things. Athletic facility has come down. I believe this is where we bought the scoreboard from, is that right? This line, yeah, so we don't need that this year, that's coming down. All facilities is staying the same, we're gonna get some additional rock lights. Town park facilities has come down too. We spent a little more than expected in this year, but this is the line where we took some of the monument from.
Yes.
Yeah, so we don't need to duplicate that, so that's down. Next page, 51. We plugged in the actual number for grounds maintenance, the contracted mowing. That's pretty good savings there if you look. 3601, advertising is up. That's just to ramp up the advertising for the programs. And any debt principal will be shown in debt service. If you wanted to add on that, okay. Moving to cemeteries, which is on page 2. Don't believe there were a lot of changes here. There was a decrease in a couple of items, homeowners reimbursement, training costs. Those came down. We haven't used them, as you can see, for a while. But in case somebody wants to go to a cemetery class or something like that, it's there. Operating supplies are the same. Really no change, except in infrastructure, we bumped that down to 2,000. Yeah, so total decrease of, it's like about 3,000 in repair and maintenance.
Shelley?
On 25-17, routine road. There's been like, we keep asking for money and its actual numbers are at 0. And then we're asking for another 1,500 and our budget for this year is 1,500 and we're at 0. And it says roads a new section. I mean, I know that they did road maintenance and stuff. I spent some time there, but, the road maintenance, so there's nothing for last year that was there, I guess, is what I'm asking. I mean, I know that they flattened it out and fixed.
It doesn't look like anything was taken out of that last year.
So is it necessary to keep the 1,500?
Well, that's what we're proposing for the old road maintenance. And we'll spend some of it in the
And we
spring.
can't get it done in the spring and use the 1,500 that's there.
So this is one of those accounts where, I agree that nothing was spent. This is one of those places where work is either done in the fall or the spring. Nothing happens there in the winter time. So in the spring, if there's road maintenance that needs to happen, that's when we spend it. And in the budget that's being proposed now, it would be spent a year for the spring.
Cindy?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So is it our highway crew that does the handles the road maintenance in the cemetery? Got it. We'll get to that in the next. Yeah, I think it's a great question and something worth looking at when we delve deeper.
So would the money in that line, is that basically for material from M&H or whoever we'd get the road material from?
Mr. Chair, it's typically material, and again, we don't charge between departments for who puts it out. That would be materials. And I think, to my point earlier, one of the things that's happened is we've had material that we've got on site that we've used quite a bit of. It's probably why that hasn't been used there.
Back to my last comment about fees on some of the things we offer Mark. I know I have a reputation of having a cheapskate heart, but in looking at the plantations, I haven't been able to identify any plantation resident tax funded improvements that the residents of Racing benefit. And it would just feel better to me if they contribute a little more to all the things that we put out there. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Page 54, there's nothing to show here, there's just, it's been presented to you because there's a year on the year, 1 year of the 3 still remaining there, so you can see where it was 3 years after. No proposal there, not this year anyway. So we get to the comfort station on 56. Another increase in 1507 paper supplies. It's a common theme this year. Don't see any changes there until janitorial services. One I need to point out that has gone to bid, so that 10,000 is likely to be modified. 3527. So that's the regular pumping station. Boston pumping station. Very similar explanation there. Paper supplies are up, they're under 1507. 3527 is likely to be modified. Depending on where we land with the new proposal.
Dylan?
In line 25-01 for buildings. It looks like we want to raise another 3,500 and we're only at $7.96 in that line item year to date. For all those extra things listed below, could it be considered to reduce that back to 2,000 and spend the 3,500 raised this year?
Which page are you?
Which one are you looking at? What page on, Joe?
I'm on page 56,
Ah.
25-01 for the building.
The other one on 57.
Yeah, I know, I was looking too. Bed sheet.
So that's one of those lines where, you know, we could wake up tomorrow, pipes frozen, or it could be maintenance on faucets. So, you know, some years we might not hit that line, but other years, you know, there could be major problems, you know, that need to be fixed, but those numbers fluctuate, you know, due to no maintenance, no repairs needed, but, you know, you could have something happen that could, you know, clear that line right out. So.
Well, I understand that, and I understand things happen, and then unforeseen things happen. It's just a matter of raising that much money every single time, and in actual numbers for like 2024, we only spent $106, and the budget amount was $2,000. So I'm just, that's all I'm looking at, is to find a little spot where to cut and lower, and not necessarily raise that much money every time.
Yeah, I think we finished page 57 too. That brings us to culture on page 58. Increase there in the Veterans Monument. Prices of flags. I guess you found a better deal on those. 6002 streetscape. So there's an increase here, a pretty significant one. And we're at a point where it's time to update some things, and also we want to get some banners into the mix. So we've got some decent wreaths, but we're looking to replace some of the other ones with banners. It's a maintenance thing, it happens every so often. So that's up significantly. And then fireworks, I did not catch this on the first round through, but this should be 10,350. And that was a request of Mr. Sargent was gonna put them on the 2026 fireworks, asked if we would consider just increasing the fireworks by the COLA each year, so we don't fall back on that, so. So 6003 should be 10,350. 10,350.
Question, sorry.
Yeah.
Again, not, I'm gonna try to say this correctly without hopefully overstepping. And I obviously totally respect reductions in any line. My curiosity is in flags. I'm just hoping less expensive doesn't always mean they're not the same quality, but it's very important to me, the flag itself, and hopefully many others, but I'm hoping the material that it's made out of and the vibrancy of that cheaper flag is of the same presence.
Yeah, they're a quality flag. The other thing that's going on in that line is there was I think some money put in this year to update names on the monument, but I don't think that had any. I don't think we had enough names to put on the monument, so the money, we're dropping that by that amount too, which I didn't mention.
Well, say Keith.
All set, thank you.
So I think that completes culture. The next are general assistance on page 59, no change here. To date, we've spent 1,700. And it goes up or down. Depends on, what's going on in society. We do get reimbursed by the state when we submit the paperwork. We get 70% of this back. So I'm gonna leave it at 2,000 because as you can see, it hasn't gone over that in the last few years. And the tax, county tax, education are just in here in placeholders. I don't have those actual numbers yet. An estimated increase of 10% just plugged in there. An estimated 5% education. Those just plug in there. Those are not actual numbers. So those are just placeholders. And of course, municipal donations on page 62. This is what has been submitted to the town office so far. So it looks like this year the requests are up to 236,655 over the budget of 173, 427 this year.
Kelly?
So just curious, on line number 60-25 for the Rangeley Health and Wellness, 10,000 and then 23, it doesn't add up to the 20,005. Is that a mistake?
It's a good question. We'll have to double check that. We'll have to look into it. Again, for anybody watching, these are items on page 62. These are not proposed by the manager, even though there's a manager column here. These are third party or donation requests that come in through my office, through the board. Some of them are petitioned, a lot of them are petitioned. Requests, some of them are not. And these folks typically will invite them into one of your public hearings when you get to that point, so they can give a 2 or 3 minute presentation, explain what they do for the community. And then it'll be on the warrant, provided the board puts them there. The voters can vote on it.
What's the petition deadline?
It was January, it's in the 1st of January, so it's come and gone. don't know if it was January 3rd this year, but it's typically the first business week of January. Any questions on that? All I have on that section, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Thank you, Joe.
Thanks for being here, Pat. You're also free to stay or go. Happy to have you stay.
Kelly?
Being Mark and watching efficiencies and stuff like that, the one thing for like the, fire department to consider, was to, maybe have a dollar amount that is charged to the plantation for, the select board, the town manager who manages those departments, building that they're in. I'm just throwing that out there because I think there's a lot of expenses that the taxpayers of Rangeley take on for that department that should be contributed to that dollars. And in addition to that, we only ask for $500 for the park from the plantations. And maybe that's something we need to consider asking them for more. Just throwing it out there because they use it.
Yep, thank you.
$500 doesn't cut the bill. Sorry, it just.
Okay, down to number 6, we got another meeting coming up on the 4th. If the budget committee has any follow-up questions for any other department heads, they could get them into Joe. We'll have staff back at that meeting.
Well, yeah, Mr. Chair, we'll have staff available, staff and or answers to your questions available on February 11th. So if you have any that haven't been answered so far, I'm going to talk about a couple here in a minute. If they haven't been answered so far, if you bring them to me on the 4th, I will make arrangements to get those answered, whether in writing or in person on the 11th.
Follow up from last meeting, you got anything? What's that?
It's a short window.
I do have a couple follow-ups, Mr. Chair, from last meeting. There was a question, there were 2 questions posed. The first one was, are town vehicles covered when they go to an employee's home at night, a police officer at night? The answer is yes, the insurance follows the vehicle, which we looked into on the front end, but I wanted to double check before I answered your question. And insurance follows the vehicle. No family should be in the vehicle was the other comment that I received. Part 2, or question 2 was about whether or not a take-home vehicle is taxable income for PD. I think it was specifically, it was about an unmarked, but the answer is the same. If it's used for business purposes and not personal purposes, and there's a policy that the town has, or an SOP, in our case for the police, then the employee is not required to claim that as income. I think that was the nature of the question.
Thank you, Joe.
And then I feel like there was another question that was answered. Our treasurer put together for the budget committee, there was a question from one of the budget committee members about what would it look like if IPP was increased to 70% for non-union folks. This is in your package. It's a page that we're trying to put together. And then there's another scenario on the bottom for a main paid family leave act increase to 2%. And there are some assumptions associated with that we talked about on the bottom. So that information is there for folks. Is there any follow-up that I'm missing from the last meeting? Specific questions? So.
Sure.
Is it okay to talk about the, are we gonna be discussing the survey? I'm just curious why we didn't choose like people within Franklin County, that's our competition on who people go to on certain jobs. I mean, or what their pays are and stuff like that.
I didn't think we were going to be discussing it. I don't think any of us planned to discuss it. We talked to MMA when we set it out. And we looked at towns that were the same size as us. We looked at towns that offered the same services as us, because we're kind of unique. You can't necessarily look just at population, because a lot of towns don't offer everything that we do. So that's kind of why we got the mix that we did.
And a lot of them we didn't get.
Yeah, it's
We had requested. and
right. Should have been
didn't
two
get the
more.
information.
Yeah, there were two that I think were non-responsive, but there was a substitute of one of them. Freiberg was subbed in for one of them.
All right. Oh, go ahead.
So looking at this memo really quick, that was submitted to the budget committee from the PD about the hours. Did that change from the actual contract? Because the contract we have has this different schedule. It looks like.
I can address that, Mr. Chair. So I have, after the last board meeting, I thought it would be a good idea to put together a memo to present to the board and the budget committee tonight. It kind of summarizes, the police coverage nuances that are currently happening. So I don't want to read the whole thing to you, but we do have our officers working on a rotating schedule now, 24 hours on, 48 hours off. To answer the question about the contract, there are scheduled hours in that, but the town, management of the town has the right to amend those with notice, which has happened. And I also, in the, one of the paragraph, I think it's the same paragraph here, in paragraph 2, I explained that we are in discussions with the union about on-call provisions, certain overtime provisions. And if there's a resulting agreement, there should be some financial relief for the town and favorable conditions for the officers. So this is ongoing. And when there is an agreement reached, we'll put the details out there for both know what is involved in that. But I want to point out that we spent, if you've seen the reports, we've spent about 55% on the operating budget today. But we are on track to exceed the current budget by about $95,000. Roughly 54,000 of that is a result of pay and benefit increases from contract to contract. The rest of it is, bulk of the rest of it is related to overtime associated with the schedule. So that's laid out in here. There's a recommendation for the board in here that they'll have on their agenda at the next meeting, how I think they should approach that with town meeting.
So I'll just have one more question. Sorry. If I'm looking at the shift, is this correct, where basically this rotating schedule is 24 hours on 48 hours off? So that means that the cruiser is being run for 24 hours. And then they take the vehicle home for 48 hours?
Mhm.
So it's 2 days, 2 days. Is this why the overtime is so out of whack?
This is gonna fix that.
So yeah, there are two main reasons why this just to be clear, this is not over budget currently, but it is on track to go over budget. The main reason, as I see it, is primarily in contract to contract. So what I mean by that is outside of overtime, what an employee, or in this case, an officer, made in 2024 is less than they would make or are making in fiscal year 25, which we're in now. Just because the wage was increased, and it's that way in public works, it's that way in fire department also. I mean, everybody got increases. PD needed a little bit more to be competitive. So just using contract to contract, it's over $50,000 difference. The bulk of the remainder is based on scheduling and overtime related.
I'm trying to make sense of it all,
Yeah.
and I'm not understanding how the schedule is working, and is it true that they're sleeping in the Quonset fire station? On a cot?
That, there's a bunk there now. That is absolutely correct.
During the budget process, it was either 3 years ago or 4 years ago, there was a line item in there for a time clock. That was funded to did the town ever get one?
That has not happened yet, no. No, if I can back up though to the previous question.
Yeah.
Folks are taking rest breaks, but they're available for calls. I want to be clear about that.
Right,
And they're responding to calls
right.
24/7.
Whereas last time where we had a schedule where, someone was on call. So that's what I was trying to explain, trying to grasp with the numbers and stuff, is that we used to have, an on-call person that got paid for on-call pay because they lived in town, but now we don't have that choice anymore of anyone living in town. So I'm just trying to figure out how the numbers work, because it is the talk around town, and it is, yeah.
I totally agree with that, and it's a good point that you bring up, in order to get, qualified staff and so forth that are, willing to work here, they're not all either A, interested in moving here, or probably can't afford to move here, either one. So they've come in from the outside, so you have to kind of think about how do you encourage them to be part of the team? How do you fill those spots? Which we've been kind of creative in doing that, and I can't tell you, what a great team we've got. I mean, we really do have great folks, so. I think those are all good questions to ask. I think those are all good questions to answer, so that the public understands the answer.
That's why I'm asking the question.
And that's
because it
really
needs to
the-
get out there, because it's not,
Yes, the impetus for this memo is to get that out.
right.
So just to, I'm trying to just get it, we're just getting this memo, so I'm just trying to wrap my head around as we've got a deadline of a week to send in questions. So our officers are working a rotating schedule of 24 hours on. So you have one officer on for 24 hours, and they're paid to sleep during that period of time.
Currently, yes.
Rest.
Okay, but reiterate, they are available and are responding to calls when they come in. They're available. to respond.
Seem like people on call.
So each week, one officer works 3 shifts, 3 24-hour shifts. And so I'm struggling with the math. So 24 hours on, 2 days off. Yeah, it doesn't.
So there are 3 of them. Every officer, each third week, every person that's working has to work 3 24-hour days. So for instance, a Monday or Wednesday.
I'm sure the board has benefited from much discussion, but this is brand new.
I can understand, it's a lot to take in. no doubt.
Yeah, so I'm just trying to, like I said, we've got a week to get in questions, that, and, I'm sure questions will come up afterwards. Yeah, I mean, I guess, this is tough. This is tough. The state police doesn't even have 24/7 coverage. And that's where the on-call pay comes in, it's.
So
The warden service didn't have 24/7 coverage, and we're the town of Rangeley for 24/7 coverage, so it's just a lot to absorb right now. Especially with a
Actually,
husband.
we're not the warden service orders, we are the town of Rangeley.
Yeah, well, I've got firsthand knowledge of, living with and being married to a first responder for 25 years, so there's, and, yeah, so it's, I've got a little bit of inside knowledge. So that's what my point is to gain knowledge and have the opportunity to ask
I guess the
questions
whole
right now.
point is the fact that there's no one here that can do the 24-hour coverage other than right now.
And I don't
I
think
mean,
that I get
with a call out,
Yes.
something happens.
right. And the response time to have somebody in town 24/7, night and day.
And just to
Plus the
clarify,
Cost to the county too would probably be.
So how do they overlap? Okay, so you know what I mean? So I know how it's shifting work, but it's, so how many times is there? I pulled in the other day and I saw 3 cruisers here. So I saw the chief here and I saw 2 cruisers in the back, and that was on Monday. So how many times do they overlap where there's 2 or 3 people on duty? I'm just curious, because I I'm trying to, how does the schedule work, I guess?
So there would be a debrief every day, you know, if whether the chief was here or not, he happened to be here Monday, so he was part of the debrief. But when somebody's coming off duty, they kind of check in with the person coming on duty. So it doesn't happen, it's not a very long period. Could be 10 or 15 minutes, could be half an hour, depending on what's going on.
Okay, so there's 3 people, right?
There are 3 officers, 1 chief.
3 officers, a sergeant and two patrol, right?
That is correct.
Okay, so then they go 2 days, and then built in that time is 8 hours of overtime. It's not the same thing where you're doing 36 and 20.
It's different.
It is different. Sorry.
It's
I don't
different. And one of the things, I guess the other point I want to make before I lose it is the budget that you will be, that we've proposed is built on this format with a couple of presumed adjustments that I can't really talk much about. Just want you to know that that's what the next year's budget is based
We should have updated information at our next meeting,
on.
hopefully.
I can't promise that.
Right, but that's what we're hoping.
I didn't look at your memo, I just stuck it in my.
But you got one, right?
But I do have.
Yeah.
And, so does the chief not patrol, is he strictly administrative?
Primarily, yeah.
And I'll put it out there, if there's people that have concerns or questions, please come to a meeting. I've been saying that all
Yeah, I'm
along.
just curious with that. What time?
Jim, this is the first time we're seeing this.
She's saying it's the talk of the town, that it's 24/7 coverage. If people are talking about it, come see us.
In general.
Yeah, so I mean, yeah, we'll come with questions. We're more than welcome to answer them.
Happy to have positive feedback.
That's all I've heard is positive. So I mean, if there's negative out there, I definitely want to hear it.
Yeah.
But- Yeah, we got a motion to adjourn?
Make motion to adjourn at 6:38.
Second by Sam, second by Ethan, all in favor? All right, thank you all for coming tonight. See you on the 4th, if not before.
This issue, an 8 second.
Yeah.